Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the first webinar that we are hosting for 2019. We're so happy that you could join and be here. Today's webinar, 2019 IT Operations and Trends, Where Should You Focus Your Strategy, is based on a study that was conducted by Research Corp in the end of November 2018, and it was sponsored by Fidelis Technologies. My name is Stacy. I'm the Director of Marketing for Fidelis, and I'll be kicking off our webinar today. Our presenter today is Chief Technology Officer for Fidelis, Josh Reinman. Josh is truly passionate about technology and has over 16 years of experience in IT services consulting and management. Before I kick the webinar off to Josh, I just want to cover a few points. The 2018 Nationwide IT Services Report surveyed IT directors with teams ranging from 1 to 100 members about their current IT infrastructures. The data is comprised of 406 responses from organizations with 100 to 5,000 plus users. Today's presentation is going to cover the following topics. First, we're going to cover IT strategy discovery, where we should really be focusing for 2019. The second part is going to be what is keeping IT leaders up at night and how to kind of plan for it in our current strategy planning. And then the next portion is going to be how to augment your 2019 strategy to really accomplish all of your high priority items and goals. And then the last part is going to be predictions for where we think the market will take us this year and what trends we can expect. Then we're going to wrap up with a question and answer portion. We ask that you ask questions throughout the webinar, but we're going to answer them toward the end of the presentation. And now I'll hand the webinar over to Josh.
Thank you, Stacy, for that great introduction. So let's start off, as Stacy mentioned, with strategy trends for 2019. The results of our study from the 2018 IT Services Report shows what the top priorities are within IT organizations from around the country. The top 4 issues, as noted here, are security, cost reduction, upgrading legacy systems, and cloud deployments. At just over 50%, security is the #1 priority for organizations, and this really should come as no surprise. The sophistication and frequency of security threats and breaches has become daily front-page news. IT teams across the U.S. are concerned with securing their organization's network and data. With security being the top priority for organizations, it should be no surprise that most, at about 74%, have an existing risk governance strategy going into 2019. This is the first step to combat security concerns. After all, a risk governance plan is simply a structured approach to identifying, assessing, and managing risk. When looking at our IT risk governance strategy, we typically divide it into 3 general categories: preventable risks, strategic risks, and external risks. Any of these categories, if ignored, can cause the loss of data or even loss of business. Risk governance strategies are not meant to be static. As threat landscapes continue to evolve due to the increased sophistication and available technology, so too should your risk governance strategy. In order to do this effectively, we must first understand and track the risks in order to best mitigate them. Although having a risk governance plan in place is a requirement to minimizing your organization's exposure, it's not foolproof. Should your organization be the victim of a breach, you'll need to have the ability to continue functioning and to restore yourselves to good health. That brings us into business continuity plan and disaster recovery planning. These are essential parts of any business strategy, any IT strategy, and will help combat any level of security breaches that may occur. We see that decision makers are often mistaken about what makes up a disaster recovery plan. Many times they believe that their backup strategy or simply backing up their data is a sufficient precaution in the event of a disaster. In reality, that's just one step. You must also have a plan to restore the data amongst other details. After looking at the results, I'm happy to see that about 2/3 of organizations have a complete strategy for backup for business continuity and disaster recovery going into 2019. However, I am a bit surprised to see that 20% don't have a complete strategy in place, and it appears that 14% have little or no plan to recover from a disaster. A complete disaster recovery strategy requires determining which systems are considered mission critical, creating a recovery order, including roles and responsibilities, and a communications plan, and most importantly, a way to perform valid testing. This is how we're going to mitigate risk in downtime, maintain compliance, and avoid costly outages. And as an organizations are always looking to streamline their operations, IT is often looked to as a place to focus on for cost reduction. And that leads us into our next topic, which is a cost reduction strategy. The cost of implementing, managing, and maintaining IT spending is one of the most challenging tasks that any business faces. Due to the reliance on technology, as well as the complexity of it, cutting IT costs can, if not well planned out, have an adverse effect on the entire organization. Smart planning can reduce the risk and even increase operational efficiency. While there are any number of areas in which to focus for reducing costs, we're going to pick the 4 that came up top of mind within our study. One is outsourcing support. So keeping the lights on with these complex systems is usually complex. That's the nature of the systems we have. And it's also a specialized job that can consume up to 50% of an IT budget. A lot of firms either hire employees to take care of these tasks, or they pull skilled engineers off other projects to handle them. Outsourcing parts of your IT organization to a professional and managed services provider is often the most cost-effective option for organizations, or even 24-hour helpline via telephone. Without pulling valuable resources from your team, you can take advantage of these services. Furthermore, a good managed services provider will be proactive in monitoring your environment, further reducing the load on your internal team and increasing operational efficiency. The next thing that our survey revealed was implementing a mobile BYOD policy. So more and more firms are slashing their IT budgets by implementing a BYOD policy. And although a company shouldn't leave the cost entirely up to their employees, providing a stipend for mobile device technology, including device upgrades and mobile plan subsidy, can help keep costs at a predictable level and remove the risk of overrun of things like mobile device plans. Something to keep in mind is that predicting costs can be just as valuable as reducing them. Next is consolidating systems and platforms. As businesses grow, so does their IT infrastructure. Over time, these systems can become disparate and inefficient. Consolidating services where possible makes the processes involved more efficient and less expensive. This can often be realized in tighter system integration, more accessible and faster support from a single vendor. You may also get more advantageous pricing from a single vendor as you push more of your spend towards them, something to certainly be considered. And last is switching to an OpEx-driven cloud model. So more and more IT leaders are taking on the approach of we as a company are in the business of X. X can be accounting, retail, legal services, you name it. What they're not in the business of is maintaining servers, upgrading software, etc. An IT organization's primary objective is to provide safe, usable, and easily accessible services to their constituents. Maintaining the hardware on which these services runs is not a requirement of the job, although in the past it may have seemed as it was. Switching to cloud services reduces your need to maintain hardware and software while simultaneously keeping the services up to date with a higher level of availability and a security budget likely greater than what your organization can afford. There are hosts of cloud platforms out there for just about every business operational function imaginable. Secure, simple solutions from trusted vendors such as Cisco and Microsoft and many others provide great services to meet almost all of your needs. A good cloud advisor can help you meet your goals both financially and operationally. Another cost-saving strategy, which is also a strategic objective, is the upgrading of legacy solutions. One such solution is our WAN. So over time, we've seen server infrastructure go back and forth between centralized and decentralized as computing power and system requirements have evolved. The one thing we've always had going for us is that this infrastructure always remained within our own walls, right, within the perimeters of our network. This meant having good quality, costly, and often multiple connections between our locations. Today, our applications are everywhere. They reside in globally distributed public clouds, on third-party managed hosting platforms, and within our own corporate data centers and co-located data centers. Our users are mobile, distributed, and accessing the applications and data from a myriad of locations and devices. Many conventional networks were designed to support critical services living within our private corporate network. However, such a design is ill-suited to support the dynamic nature of today's applications and user base. Enter SD-WAN, or Software-Defined Wide Area Network. SD-WAN provides secure, intelligent path selection over any network medium, ensuring your traffic gets to its final location in the most effective manner. SD-WAN's best analogy is the mobile map and directions application Waze. Everyone should be familiar with that. Waze is constantly updating the path that you're taking to your destination, and SD-WAN functions in a similar way. It's always looking at the network conditions, latency, congestion, and so on to make sure that your traffic is taking the most optimal path. SD-WAN can be a clear path to cost reduction, as well as increasing efficiency in today's environments. This technology will allow your organization to be weaned off of expensive private WAN circuits, as well as providing a secure, efficient link to cloud-based services, especially when you can deploy a virtual SD-WAN appliance. Last year, SD-WAN implementations gained little traction amongst the enterprise. But as we kick off 2019, we find that the number of enterprises inquiring about and implementing SD-WAN is growing quickly. SD-WAN design and implementation is an area where many organizations seek the expertise and experience of outside IT service providers because the design and technologies involved can be quite complex. Now that we've discussed where to focus on building our strategy, our next core focus is what threats are keeping IT leaders up at night and how to protect them. So our security concerns was one of the questions on our survey, and the group was asked to provide their top concerns. The results are pretty clear, with the top three focusing on email, web browsing, and human error ranked as the leading causes for concern with regards to attack vectors. These concerns are standard across pretty much all industries. First and foremost, the basics must be covered. Ensure your edge security is buttoned up tight, and do a regular check of your firewalls to make sure that only the required ports remain open. Especially as you decommission services, you want to make sure the ports open for them are also closed up. Second, make sure your general defense systems are up to date, including antivirus and anti-malware software, proper patching of all equipment, including workstation servers, and even embedded devices such as printers and other similar devices, as these can be used to launch and relaunch attacks in a network. It may seem obvious to perform such regular maintenance activities. However, you'd be surprised that there are a number of companies who come up with great excuses like we don't have the time to perform the maintenance or we can't afford the downtime. You need to ask yourself, really, how much is 1 hour of downtime worth when you compare that to a day or more of downtime for a real security breach? There are costs to everything. Regarding human error in the network, having properly skilled staff or outside help is a great start. Having a well-defined configuration standard and a well-defined change management process, including peer review of changes, can help minimize mistakes throughout your network. Another area that shouldn't be overlooked is user education. The best way to prevent malware from taking over your network is to keep it from entering in the first place. While user education is no silver bullet, as in other areas of life, education is one of the keys to success. Given that the large majority of malware enters via email or other social engineering activities, keeping an end user from clicking on a bad actor's link will go a long way in breach prevention. Next, look beyond the edge security. Most malware and data breaches these days are delivered by social engineering, as I just mentioned. With regards to malware, the entire malware package is often downloaded and installed using a seed software delivered by an email or even from a website. Users are often fooled into providing credentials to an institution such as a bank or Office 365 using phishing emails. These emails and their affiliated fake websites are becoming more and more sophisticated in their appearance, making them harder to detect. Despite education, some users will still be fooled into providing their credentials. Both of these methods rely on DNS to function. DNS is a core function of the networks, and you can't just turn it off. However, there are other places where you can mitigate it. Effective ways to deal with it are DNS filtering via URL filtering, which often lives on firewalls or even endpoint security, or finding services such as Cisco Umbrella, which work by filtering DNS queries and only returning the ones which are considered benign. Now, we understand some of the areas we need to plan for, so the next step is actually creating a plan. And while you can implement the latest best-in-class tools, you still need to ensure that the users will take part in securing the network. Enter the formal written network security policy. Every organization should have a formal written network security policy, which is regularly reviewed and updated based on the ever-changing network and security threat landscape. The frequency of updating this documentation is certainly something you need to consider within your own organization, but viewing it every 3 to 6 months is certainly a good start, and updating it as necessary as your environment changes. A network security policy documents the rules of engagement for everything from network access to treatment of confidential information. They address how these policies are enforced along with any associated consequences, and it covers the basic architecture of the organization's network security environment. The security policy also describes the different layers of network security, including standard configurations, minimum requirements for encryption, and AAA, also known as authentication, authorization, and accounting, amongst many other requirements. Network policies control how the network is implemented and configured to streamline employee activities under daily work conditions, as well as how to react under a security threat or even a breach. It is the responsibility of IT to create and maintain the document with input from other departments. The document generally accompanies or is a component of a larger corporate security policy. The corporate security policy governs data access, web browsing habits, passwords, encryptions, email usage, etc. Rules are defined for individuals and groups within and sometimes external to the organization. And this is a really important document, which is confirmed by some of the results of our research that shows that over 85% of our survey respondents have a documented network security policy in place, and that's a fantastic number that we'd always love to see increase. Now, despite the strategy and the planning and all the time you put into trying to prevent these attacks, they're likely to happen. 56% of organizations surveyed experienced a data breach involving more than 1,000 records over the past 2 years. Of those who've experienced a breach, 37% experienced multiple breaches, and 39% of these breaches were global in scope. According to the 13th Annual Cost of Data Breach Study Global Overview by IBM Security, which was performed in 2018, it's reported that the global average cost of a data breach is just under $4 million. It's quite a large sum. And that's up almost 6.5% from last year. The average cost globally for each lost or stolen document record containing sensitive information or confidential information, that's also up from last year, landing at about $148 per record, almost a 5% increase from 2017. And even though you feel protected, you must operate as though you could be breached at any moment. A security breach plan documents standard operating procedures for response to security incidents and breaches. The plan must provide a well-defined and organized approach for handling actual or potential threats to your business operations. The plan will be a durable, living document, very similar to your network security document, that should be regularly reviewed and updated, and simulation should also be conducted to assure the plan works effectively across the company. And this is something that you certainly shouldn't let your users know you're doing. The idea is to catch them in something. Cyber criminals are taking every opportunity to exploit corporate security vulnerabilities, and every organization must be prepared to handle an incident. Of the organizations participating in the survey, over 80% have a security breach plan in place, as mentioned earlier. However, the remaining organizations surveyed are at greater risk of being front page news because they have no plan in place. One of the things we can do as part of our strategy is ensure that we have an intrusion detection and intrusion prevention strategy, or often known as IDS and IPS. Now, these are tools that are really a requirement these days within your line of defenses against security breaches, and they do require their own separate strategy. Advanced persistent threats, which are threats where hackers gain access to an organization's network and systems, often with the goal of being able to gain access to them whenever they want, are escalating. These hackers are even selling organizations' internet bandwidth as a cover for other cyber criminals. Therefore, network intrusion detection and prevention tools and systems are now essential to secure in every network. So this is a matter of once something's in your network, these tools can be used to detect them instead of prevent them. The importance of intrusion detection is confirmed by our survey results, with about 85% of organizations using IDS and IPS tools and only about 15% still in need of adopting the systems. Well, the next question is, we've got all this great information, we even have a plan together, how do we make it happen? There are really only two choices. You can keep it all in-house, or you can call outside for help. Calling outside for help often means bringing in a professional or managed services organization. And the most common approach is to examine the types of talent you have, what you want to maintain internally, and determine which services are better suited by outsourcing. Outsourcing allows IT teams to focus on business-critical projects and the end-user experience. That kind of brings us to IT service provider augmentation. How do we expand our team with these outside providers? Well, ITSPs have become more and more popular as the complexity of applications and pressure for reducing technology costs increase. These two ideas don't often jive well. Partnering with an IT services provider such as Fidelis will offer some great advantages to any organization. Immediate and always up-to-date expertise is one of those. IT service providers often have a laser focus in only a handful of technologies, allowing them to become true experts. In addition, the skill set of the team is gaining insight and experience at a rapid pace due to working in many different environments and seeing many different things that come up. This experience is then brought back to your own organization to provide more efficient system management, monitoring, and fault resolution. And the next advantage of an ITSP is team expansion. Any IT services provider worth partnering with should be viewed by both them and your own team as an expansion of your team and not a separate entity. This working relationship will greatly enhance the interactions between the two parties, resulting in quicker resolution and a greater level of satisfaction. Additionally, many IT services providers, including Fidelis, offer 24/7 proactive monitoring and fault resolution. This is where the idea of team expansion is most easily realized. Allowing your full-time employees to get the rest they need overnight and on the weekends will make them happier and more productive during the business week. If your company is spanning multiple time zones or countries, this level of coverage bears even greater fruit. Allowing an ITSP to keep an eye on your systems and resolve issues that arise will allow your internal team to not only get the rest that they need, but also to focus on what matters most, which is the customer experience. If your end users experience fewer issues and see quicker resolution and greater attention to issues that do arise, they'll be in a much better position to perform to their greatest potential, ultimately increasing revenue. So some of the other benefits of an ITSP are scalability, predictability, and cost effectiveness. And this kind of rolls up to really just overall better performance for your organization. With regards to scalability, you can leverage an ITSP to scale both support up and down to accommodate your organization's changing requirements. An ITSP can help you scale quickly and efficiently to support both organic and inorganic growth. In addition to that, as your systems and infrastructure change, an ITSP can give you access to immediate access to a large pool of technicians with specialized expertise, which you may not have in-house or you may need to spend time training to in-house. So you really can hit the ground running. Next is predictability. An ITSP can be available to assist you and your team during any hour you require, up to 24/7. So when you evaluate an ITSP, that's one thing to consider. Is that a requirement? Additionally, ITSPs offer guaranteed SLAs and quality of service. So now you can, again, increase your predictability of how your systems will be managed. And the last is they can be very cost effective. Organizations can, if they choose, reduce their personnel and infrastructure support costs, while at the same time receiving access to preferred pricing on quality hardware and software from an IT services provider. Now, an alternative to reducing your personnel is to repurpose them. So you gain the additional expertise from an ITSP, and you can repurpose your existing personnel to, again, better provide better service to your end users and keep the business moving forward. All right, so now that we know what we want in an ITSP or what advantages we can gain, how do we find the right one? Engaging an IT services provider as part of the IT strategy can be an experienced and broad view of the solutions implemented and challenges faced across many organizations. However, with so many providers in the market, how do you choose one that's the right fit and has the right level of expertise? The market is saturated with different providers, and making a poor choice can really cost the company. We've narrowed it down to a small set of criteria that you should really focus on and certainly add to it for your own individual needs. First and foremost across every industry is that they must be an organizational fit. While it may seem obvious at first, finding an ITSP which fits well with your organization is in large part a matter of predictability. Predictability is predicated upon work ethic, methodology, responsiveness, and most of all, an understanding of your industry, which leads to our next point, is industry experience. Does the ITSP have experience in your industry? This is an extremely important question. Each industry operates differently and often has different priorities. A managed services provider that understands the inner workings and requirements of your industry is an extremely valuable asset to assist with the prioritization of network and system events, as well as understanding the impact of such events on your specific business. And the last thing we like to make sure you cover is standards in industry skill sets and processes. We mean IT industry skill sets and processes here. An ITSP must have the skill sets and processes in place for their service business in order for them to operate efficiently and at a scale where they can deliver high-quality, cost-effective solutions. After all, these are the main reasons to choose an ITSP. Their higher level of skill set, their greater coverage if needed, and processes in place to be as efficient as possible. And ideally, they'll be happy to share those processes with your organization as well. Now, we're moving into one of the final topics, which is our predictions for 2019. Apologies. And, in our report for 2018, which, as Stacy mentioned, concluded at the end of the year, it speaks to what IT teams nationwide are addressing currently and what their challenges are, as well as it gives some insight for their plans for 2019. While this data is extremely valuable for IT teams, and it is annually sponsored by Fidelis Technologies as a way to track the market and technology trends, but we also now want to look forward a little bit. What do we think will happen within the industry in 2019? So we've listed a few things here. One is cloud adoption. And as we mentioned earlier, a lot of organizations do have a strategy for cloud adoption this year. And it's often touted as both an ideal way to offload IT pressures and deliver anywhere, anytime access to corporate applications. But IT teams need to manage access and worry about security. The goal is to free up your existing staff to focus on application management rather than application maintenance. Moving to the cloud, specifically software as a service, allows them to do just that. Additionally, this allows the business to shift its costs from capital expenditure to operational expenditure. Often this is viewed favorably, especially by the financial folks. In a software, if SaaS isn't an option for a specific application or you consider it too critical or sensitive to host in the cloud, the next step is looking at a managed services provider because they can really keep your information on-prem but manage it efficiently. And they provide that expert level of skills in those critical applications. Additionally, as we mentioned, a top-tier managed services provider will proactively monitor, notify, and remediate issues that arise within the systems. The legwork of troubleshooting and escalating to various third parties, such as ISPs and application developers, will all be handled for you. Again, the MSP will simply keep you abreast of the situation and let your teams get the rest they need and continue focusing on moving the business forward. And with all companies, from small startups to the monoliths that are multinationals, culture is something which is often overlooked from an IT perspective. And the ability to know one's corporate culture will allow an individual and team to thrive by knowing how best to service the company and the individuals within. And knowing your corporate culture will help you pick the right applications to move to the cloud versus keeping in-house. Next is software-defined WAN. Again, as we mentioned earlier, 2018, we saw companies start to get into it. 2019 is showing that it's going to be a great increase in its adoption. And this is going to do a lot for the organization. It's going to make the migration to cloud much simpler and easier. It's going to continue to provide the quality of service that you're familiar with today using private links, and it'll help reduce costs by getting rid of some or all of those private links. In addition, it'll provide business continuity options, or I should say additional business continuity options, by adding in connectivity options such as cellular at 4G and now 5G, which is really out now. SD-WAN can also move traffic over those connections when needed. So you're, again, continuing to reduce your exposure to potential outages of a variety of kinds. Automated provisioning continues to increase as different applications are able to hook into your HR platforms and other systems. You can have templates built out and continue to automate that provisioning. And this is going to, again, reduce your costs, reduce the possibility for human error, and make sure that your systems just continue to work, allowing your staff to focus on moving the business forward. And then last is artificial intelligence. And this is one that's tough to kind of predict when it's going to really, really shine. But I believe last year a lot of companies were looking at it and even starting to dip a toe in the water. This year it's going to continue to grow stronger. Companies will continue to find use cases for it. And it's transformed itself from being a theory to a working prototype and now a usable option for a multitude of industries. While it is still fairly new and it hasn't yet taken over our lives, its appeal does continue to grow, specifically in the area of security. I also believe it's going to be a powerful tool across industries in ways we can't yet imagine. For instance, in the customer service area within organizations, first-level support is ultimately going to move to AI. You may have already interacted with AI and not even know it. Many retail websites are offering online chat support, which allow you to ask a question and in turn provide a response. Versus the canned responses that we would have 2, 3, 4 years ago, now you're getting much more sophisticated responses that are based on analysis of your question and a wealth of information they have access to. And that response is being driven by AI. So it's really starting to come of age, and I think it'll be very interesting to see how different industries are able to take advantage of it. And that concludes the presentation portion of our session. Stacy, I'll hand it back to you so we can handle some questions.
Thank you, Josh. There was a lot of really great information in that presentation. If you haven't done so already, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is the Q&A box. If you could just submit your questions there, we'll answer them in a few moments. Josh, I just have a few questions that I came up with while you were presenting that I wanted to ask you while everyone is submitting their individual questions. So just in the portion that you covered regarding the augmentation strategy, is there a way to kind of factor in staff turnover basically into your strategy? We all know in technology there's a lot of staff turnover, mainly in engineering. So what's your thoughts into that?
Yeah, that's a good point, Stacy. So the average tenure of an IT staff person is generally 1.5 to 2 years now. It's not a very long lifespan. And considering the amount of time it takes to ramp a user up once onboarding them, could be anywhere up to 3 or 6 months or even more. Now your turnover factor is going to cost the company a lot of money. And over time, this can really slow down progress. When you engage an IT services provider, while they will still have to deal with the turnover factor, a few things come into play. One is you have an entire team of knowledge that you're working with. So you're never going to be dependent on losing any single person from a knowledge standpoint. Two is they can often obscure that turnover and ramp up time because they can have it, they can ensure that additional resources are on the case, whatever is being evaluated, and B, the person they're hiring already has the very specific skill set that they're looking for. So it's really just a matter of incorporating them into the corporate culture and those individuals just becoming more familiar with your individual environment, which again is going to be enhanced by others who already know it. It's a really good question, Stacy. Thank you.
Awesome. And then my next question and my last one was just, is there just a better time to engage an IT services provider during your strategy planning? Should you do it at the beginning of the planning phase? Can you do it midway? I mean, is there just a better time to kind of review that and assess it?
Sure. So it really depends on your organization's skill set and budget specifically. So budgeting season is always a great time to consider it. You're planning for the next year ahead. It's a good time to start talking to providers to see what they can offer you and what those costs would be. When you are doing the planning, depending on your skill set, you may want to bring them in to help with the planning. You may want to have your plan in place so you know what you're looking for when you go to interview service providers, or you may just simply do something like create an RFP where you put it out and see who comes back with the most favorable answers. But yeah, it can vary greatly. Although typically the earlier you bring in a service provider, the better, because they they really can build that relationship with your team and help you to deliver the best product to your organization.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions. So thank you so much, Josh, for your insight onto the IT market and just how we can best factor all of these items into our strategy planning. And thank you to everybody who joined today. We really appreciate it. Just a little housekeeping, a recorded version of this presentation and a PDF version of the survey handout will be sent to all of the people who registered for the webinar today in the next few days. It's also going to be available on the Info Center at fidelis.com. And then just if you have any additional questions or you want any additional information regarding this presentation, you can reach out to me, Stacy at Fidelis. My information should be on the screen in a few moments. Be on the sure to look out for our next webinar, which will dive further into security services at the end of this month. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.